What made you lose respect for someone? Cheating and gambling. Well, I don't have a major life story like everyone else, but it's bad all the same. If you know me, then you know that I am friendly and will talk to anyone. So for me to not want to talk to someone, you would do or say something horrible for me to lose all interest and respect for you. That's precisely what this guy did. Let's call him Hamilton. He's a guy I've been classmates with from high school to college. In high school he seemed like a nerdy awkward guy, and I talked to him every now and then. Didn't seem too bad. We're all awkward to an extent. Shit, I was nerdy and awkward myself. I just knew how to go with the flow. Nonetheless, in high school he seemed like a cool guy. Now college, on the other hand, is a different story. During one of my semesters I ran into him again and decided to talk to him. That was a bad decision. Everything started off fine, but after a while and me introducing him to my group of friends, that when he shown his true colors. Me and friends usually have mature political discussions every now and then. None of them were ever heated or uncomfortable because we respected each other and never spewed hate. Now Hamilton had a different mindset. So when Hamilton started talking, nothing but hate came out. He had nothing good to say about the LGBT and Muslim communities. Literally saying how he wants to run over Muslim people. His justification for that is they are terrorists and they deserve it. Needless to say, I stopped talking to him. I don't argue with hateful people. I can talk to people who's willing to have a mature conversation, but that's it. Our neighbors. They've always been annoying, but it crossed the line one day when we put our puppy out on her new run in the backyard. It was about 10:30 in the morning and she barked for a few minutes. Suddenly I hear someone slamming on my door, and it was our neighbor, wife, and she started screaming at me to shut our dog up, she's trying to sleep. We'd already brought her in and I was pretty angry at that point, but brushed it off until a few days later when I got another knock on my door. It was the police investigating a noisy dog. I told him what happened, let him see the dog, and he removed the complaint. I've never liked them since. So the day my great-grandfather had been put in the group, my great-aunt had the audacity to say, "Well, now can smoke pot in here," referring to my great-grandparents' house. Now they were never anti-pot per se, but they just didn't want it in their house. Now my great-grandmother had been gone for a couple years at this point, and so they weren't there to say anything. But in my family you do not disrespect other family members like that, even if they are gone. They might be 6 feet under, but it's still their house. Lack of respect for public health orders. Anyone that lies, I'll have no respect for. My dad told me as a child, anyone that will lie to you will steal from you. I had a pretty big breakdown at my dad's house. For context, my mum and dad separated when I was 2 and lived in separate houses. My dad remarried twice after this. The wife I mention is his third. I'm 16 at the time of this story. I ran off to the train station and intended to take the train to my mum's house, who was in the next town. Eventually my dad and his wife managed to calm me down enough. After restraining me to the ground, I swore at the both of them a lot and cried a bit. They swore at me back, threatened to put me in a mental hospital and pull me out of school. They managed to get me in the car and drove me back home. I just went to bed. It was really late. That night still sticks with me, and I'd say it's very personal, considering that that was the first time I'd ever just snapped, which is very hard for me to do. A few days later I come home from work a little early. I walk around the back of the house and see my dad, his wife and his wife's brother and his husband. It wasn't uncommon for them to be around. They lived pretty close. I didn't really like them that much, but I never showed it. Anyway, as soon as I walk around the corner I can hear my dad's wife saying, and not just another human was swearing at us and yelling. As soon as I heard it I kinda just thought, so this is how it's going to be, and instantly I knew I couldn't tell them anything at all or show any emotion. Since then I have dropped all contact with my dad and his wife, and I now live safely and happily with my mum and brother. We played disc golf and he threw at an animal on Pub House. Baby. Losing respect means losing faith or trust in them. Trusting people and admiring them makes you to respect them. As there are two sides to a coin, there always be two sides to every person. So do not trust everyone. Problem solved. People with double standards and use them to dictate shit. Anyone who has I end up unassociating myself. I hold myself to high standards. If I don't meet I expect to get called out and I will take responsibility for my actions. Although I have lived a mostly pleasant, good life, I have boundaries that are in part why I got to. I meet new people with a kind wariness, even though most people are at least good at playing socially house trained. However, 4 years of Trump told me that some of those supposed friends are brainwashed to believe bombastic greedy asshats promises, so I had to add to the boundaries, because yikes. Jealous of my success even though I literally recommended him to get the same job I have. Which he subsequently got hired for and quit after 3 months. Treated my like less than dirt afterwards. I lost the respect for my best friend when he started to party with idiots. Then he began to consider himself a cool guy. But nobody from his group has money and they act like homeless. My mother got addicted to meth, told me to lie to my dad, and now denies that she did anything. I had a friend who was pushing and defending alt-right media and propaganda. I, being mixed ethnicity, piped in on one of his posts and we got into a long back and forth where I was advising that he distance himself from that racist rhetoric and he told me that the alt-right wasn't racist. He then began talking about a white ethno-state within the US, and when I asked him if I belonged in that state because of my heritage, I was told he didn't want to discuss what was and wasn't white. We stopped talking directly after that, and since that day I have monitored his progression into the white supremacist movement, his radicalization while being in the US Army, his ramped up anti-Semitic beliefs, the misogynistic/anti-feminism desire to reinstate the patriarchy, and overall unwarranted hatred. I have another friend who dove into the QAnon/MAGA world who truly believes that there is an elite cabal of kidnapping Satanists and that Donald Trump is the American Jesus. He pushed every single COVID conspiracy as it came out, all the while claiming that he could fact-check better than paid fact-checkers, ironically claiming that media fact-checkers were only looking for info that pushed their narrative. We lost touch when his wife was spouting militant posts about harming anyone who wasn't a Trumplician and claiming that Antifa was the force behind the Jan 6 storming of the Capitol. I no longer talk to these individuals but watch their feeds on social media. I no longer respect them, but I do fear their beliefs, knowing there are people way more extreme than them, and I continue to watch the stuff they post so that I can spot the signs. Friend of mine said all she needs in a relationship is a good dick. I was that child back when. Wish someone would have helped me like that. Thank you for taking him away from that hellhole. People making a living off a particular endeavor while telling others to not try and make a living like they are. Had a friend that I used to hang out with on a weekly basis. We'd smoke joints, pop pills, go to raves, cruise around the city, etc. However, one night when going to a rave, he and one of his friends invited a girl. We were all pre-gaming, however my friend got her really drunk, blackout drunk if you will. When we got to the parking garage, we all got out of the car including the girl. She was crying and said she had to piss, but couldn't stand upright. She fell over and hit her head on the cement. They saw that she was unable to function, so they dipped. I ran to my old friend and asked, "Yo, we can't just leave her here, what are you guys doing?" The friend of my friend said, "Bro, she'll be alright. Unconscious girl in a parking ramp will be okay, some shit, right?" I ignored what he said and looked to my friend. We have this rule, where if one of us is too fucked up we'd take them home. However, he just laughed in agreement to his friend and began walking off. I asked for the keys and they tossed me it. After helping the girl to get into the car, I got the girl's phone and used Siri to call her sister. She had like 12 missed calls from one person, so I just used Siri to call them back and it was her. I told her where she was and stayed with the girl till her sister and brother came to pick her up. After that night I stopped talking to him, which in turn led our whole friend group to stop taking to me. It made me sad, but glad that I saw what these people were really like. Because what if I had been that girl and no one had helped me? Fuck those guys. Peas. I let her piss in my friend's car. Lamau. Anyone still supporting the Republican Party in the USA? It is now a coup. Republican leaders in many states are orchestrating laws to prevent or make voting harder for minorities. They know they can only win by cheating. The ignorance and lack of historical literacy of their supporters saddens and angers me. They are being played by propaganda and don't know enough to realize it. They are taking down our democracy. And they are violent and hateful.